Hello everybody, and welcome to a new video of mine that, it's on the second channel, because I don't really think it fits my main audience. Sorry for any background noise, by the way. Basically, oh my fucking god. Basically, this is just gonna be a creepypasta reading of Squidward's suicide. And I know this video is not monetized, it will never be monetized, and that's basically all I'm gonna say. I'll be reading the entire story the best I can. So yeah, that's basically it. So let's begin. I just want to start off by saying that if you want an answer at the end, prepare to be disappointed. There isn't one. I was an intern at Nickelodeon Studios for a year in 2005 for my degree in animation. It wasn't paid, of course, most internships aren't, but I did have a part beyond education. To adults, it might not seem like a big one, but most kids at the time would go crazy over it. Since I worked directly with the editors and animators, I got to view new episodes days before they aired. I'll get right to it without giving too many unnecessary details. They had very recently made the SpongeBob movie. The entire staff was someone sapped of creativity, so it took them longer to start up a season. But the delay lasted longer for more upsetting reasons. There was a problem with the series' full premiere that set everyone and everything back several months. Me and two other interns were in the editing room along with the lead animators and sound editors for the final cut of an episode. We received a copy that was supposed to be Fear of a Krabby Patty and gathered around the screen to watch. Now, given that the final cut isn't final yet, animators often put up a mock title card at the beginning. It's sort of an inside joke for us, with phony, oftentimes lewd titles being used, such as How Sex Doesn't Work, instead of Rockabye Bivalve, in which SpongeBob and Patrick adopt a sea scallop. Nothing particularly funny, just work-related chuckles. So when we saw the title card Squidward's suicide, we didn't think of it as more than a morbid joke. One of the other interns did a small throat laugh at it. The episode started with the happy-go-lucky music playing as normal. The story began with Squidward playing with his clarinet. The story began with Squidward practicing his clarinet, hitting a few sour notes like normal. We hear SpongeBob laughing outside. Squidward stops, yelling at him to keep it down, as he has a concert that night and needs to practice. SpongeBob says, "Okay," and goes to see Sandy with Patrick. The bold splash screen comes up, and we see the ending of Squidward's concert. This is when things began to seem off. While playing, a few frames repeat themselves, but the sound doesn't. It's supposed to be synced with the animation, so yes, that's not common, but when Squidward stops playing, the sound finishes, as if the skip never happened. There's slight murmuring in the crowd before they begin to boo him. Not the normal cartoon booing that's common in the show, mind you, you could very hear malice in it. Squidward is in full frame and looks visibly afraid. The shot goes to the crowd with SpongeBob in the center frame. He is too booing, which is very much unlike him. That isn't the oddest thing, though. What's odd is that everyone has hyper-realistic eyes, all very detailed, clearly not shots of real people's eyes, but something a bit more real than CGI. The pupils are red. Some of us looked at each other, obviously confused, but since we weren't the writers, we didn't question its appeal to children yet. The shot goes to Squidward sitting on the edge of his bed, looking very forlorn. The view of his porthole window is of a night sky, so it isn't very long after the concert. The unsettling part is at this point, there's no sound. Literally zero sound. Not even the feedback from the speakers in the room. It's as if the speakers were tuned off, but their statuses showed them working very perfectly. Squidward just sits there in silence, blinking for about 30 seconds, then starts to sob softly. He puts his hands, tentacles, over his eyes and cries quickly for a minute more. All the while, the sound in the background is very gradually growing from nothing to very audible. It sounds like a slight breeze through the forest. The screen begins to slowly zoom on his face. By slowly, I mean that it's noticeable if you look at 10 shots a second apart side by side. The sobbing gets louder and more full of hurt and anger. The screen twitches a bit, as if it twists on itself for a split second, before going back to normal. The wind through the tree sound gets louder and more severe, as if a storm is brewing somewhere. The eerie part is that this sound, and Squidward's sobbing, sounded real. It was like it wasn't coming from the speakers, but that the speakers themselves were holes that the sound was traveling through from the other side. As good as sounds the studio likes to have, they don't have the equipment to be able to produce that in audio of that quality. Below the sound of the wind and sobbing, very faintly audible, something like laughing, came in odd intervals and never lasted more than a second, so I had a hard time pitting it. We watched this episode twice, so pardon me if things sound too specific, but I've had time to think about them. After 30 seconds of this, the screen blurred and twitched violently, and something flashed over it, as if a single frame was replaced. The lead animator paused and rebounded frame by frame. What we saw was horrible. It was a photo of a... I'm not saying that on YouTube. Nope. Nuh-uh. The most upsetting part is that there was a shadow of the photographer. No crime tape, evidence tags, or markers, and the angle was completely off for a shot designed to be evidence. It would seem that they were the person responsible for the... No. We were, of course, mortified and pressed on, hoping that this wasn't just a sick joke. The screen flipped back to Squidward, still stopping, louder than before, half of his body in the frame. There was now what appeared to be blood running down from his face from his eyes. The blood was also done in a hyper-realistic style, looking as if it had got on your fingers with such screen. The wind sounded now as if it were to have a gale blowing through the forest. There were even snapping sounds, like of branches. The laughing, the deep baritone, lasted for longer intervals and came more frequently. After about 20 seconds, the screen twisted again and showed a single frame photo. There was reluctant to go back. We all were, but he knew he had to. This time, the photo appeared to be of... I'm not saying that again. No, oh, nah. Again, no. I had to choke back and vomit. And one intern, the only female in the room, ran out. The show resumed. Actually, about 5 seconds after the second photo played, the video quickly went silent. All sound cut out, like it did when the scene started. He put his tentacles down, and his eyes were now done hyper-realism, like the others were at the beginning of the episode. They were bleeding, bloodshot, pulsating. He just stared at the screen as if watching the viewer. After about 10 seconds, he started sobbing. This time not covering his eyes. The sound was piercing and loud. The most fear-inducing thing of all was that his sobbing was mixed with screams. Tears and blood were dripping down his face at a heavy rate. The wind sound came back, and so was a deep voice laughing. This time it was a still photo that lasted for a good 5 frames. The animator was able to stop it. And I'm not saying that anymore again. No. The lead sound editor told us to stop. He had to call on the creator to see this. Mr. Hillenberg arrived within about 15 minutes. He was confused as to why he'd been called down, so the editor just continued the episode. Once the next few frames were shown, all screaming and sound again stopped. Squidward was just staring at the viewer, his face taking up the whole frame for about 3 seconds. The shot quickly panned out. That deep voice said, "Do it," and we saw a shotgun in Squidward's hands. He immediately puts the gun in his mouth and pulls the trigger. Realistic blood and brain matter splatters the wall behind him and his bed. He flies back with force. The last 5 seconds of the episode show his body on the bed. On its side, one eye dangling from what's left of his head above the floor, staring blankly at it. And the episode ends. Mr. Hillenberg was obviously very angry at this. He demanded to know what the fuck was going on. Most people left the room at this point, so there were just a handful of us left to watch it again. Viewing the episode twice only served to imprint the entirety of it in my mind and caused me horrible nightmares. Sorry I stayed. The only theory we could think of was that the file had been edited by someone in the chain for the drawing studio to hear. The CTO was called in to find out what had happened. Analysis of the file did show it was mixed with new material. However, the timestamp of the change was a mere 24 seconds before we began viewing it. All equipment involved was examined for foreign software and hardware as well as glitches, such as if the timestamp was showing us the wrong time, but everything checked out fine. We didn't know what had happened, and to this day, nobody does. There was an investigation into the nature of the photos, but nothing came of it. No child was seen identified, no clues were gathered from the data involved, nor physical clues from the photos. I never believed in unexplainable phenomena before, but now that I've had something happen to me and I can't prove anything about it beyond anecdotal evidence, I think twice about things. And that is Squidward's suicide. Sorry for the imperfect recording, I guess, but yeah, that was Squidward's suicide. To be honest, this story wasn't all that bad, except for the parts, which I do not want to read. I do not want this video to get age restricted, even though it probably will be, but like, to be honest, it's honestly just disgusting. The subject matter in itself isn't all that good either. However, it was the early days, and I do understand if the creator was young at that point, he may not have understood the implications of playing these themes. But overall, it's pretty fine. It's overall kind of bearable, and yeah, it does leave a subtle grainy taste in your mouth once you read it, and it just, yeah. But that's basically it. Thank you for watching.